Hey guys, Adam here with ZFG Racing. We're going to give something a little different a try for the YouTube channel. I'm not good at this by any means, but I figured I would give it a shot since I have the facility now. This is a shop at my house. Currently have the R&D Explorer up on the lift. Had this for a while. I've just been accumulating parts, haven't really done a whole lot to it. Been using it to test out a couple things here and there. And today we're actually going to be covering installing a prototype one-piece carbon fiber drive shaft from our friends over at Gulfcoast Driveshaft. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alright guys, let's take a look underneath the car here. Now keep in mind, I did remove all of these heat shields already once to do some measurements for the drive shaft. But I put them back up there in kind of a temporary fashion so I can show you guys a couple things about getting these heat shields out. It's pretty straightforward. They're just bolted off of studs, and there's a couple pop fasteners and stuff like that. The only tricky part is right here across the tunnel next to the exhaust mount. There's actually a bracket that's bolted in there with some torque screws. So there's access to the torque screw here on this side, and then over on this side you have to pull down the fabric and you can get up in there. Let me get a little light going. And there is two torque screw fasteners up in there that you have to get out to get this heat shield out. Now when you take these out, this one is going to come down, this one is going to come down and swing out of the way, and this one needs to go backwards a little bit. And actually on the back side of it, there is a couple fasteners up on the gas tank that you got to get loose. Got to get that side one out. It's not sticking through currently because it's up there temporarily. You also need to take your transfer case heat shield off. That one's very straightforward. You can see it's loose right now. There's just a couple bolts that go around that. That'll help us get this drive shaft out. Like I said, we are going to a one-piece drive shaft, and we are going to be eliminating this rubber coupler here. So yeah, let's go ahead and get these heat shields dropped out of the way and we can get going on this. Alright guys, so we got the heat shields out of the way enough that we can get to the drive shaft. As you can see, we were working with a carrier bearing and a rubber coupler on this side. The other unusual thing about these drive shafts is they have a CV joint in the back. So that's kind of unusual. We'll be popping that off once we get all this other stuff free. But we're gonna go ahead and get working on this. These up here are 18mm bolts. Back here we're looking at some 13s. So we're gonna go ahead and pop this out. Alright, I'm going to have to go pop the car in neutral and spin the drive shaft around a little bit to be able to get to that top one. Alright, got the car in neutral. Just going to roll the drive shaft over quick. Maybe not because the parking brake's still on. Let me go take care of that. Alright, so I got the car in neutral. I got the parking brake off. Go ahead and roll this drive shaft over. And then I'm actually going to go put the parking brake back on so it'll hold the drive shaft while I'm trying to break this bolt free. Alright, so back here we just got the two 13 mils for the carrier bearing. Definitely want to have this on not the low torque and the high torque. That usually helps. right, we got that free. We're gonna go ahead and drop this drive shaft right out of here. Now, this center section also is a slip joint as well. It is held on there with wire zip ties, so it won't just fall out, but don't freak out when that starts moving around on you. And then we'll go back here and we'll get this popped out. I'm gonna have to go grab a pry bar because I do believe there is a circlip on that based on the differential that I have that's a spare. So we'll go ahead and get that, and we'll get that out of there. All right, guys, we're back under the car. I didn't film this part because I was having a really hard time with it. It turns out Ford makes a special puller tool for this, which is basically a U-bolt that clamps on right here. And then it has a little threaded hole for the slide hammer. Unfortunately, I don't have that tool. I did look to see how much that tool costs, and it's a $250 tool, which seems kind of excessive for literally a U-bolt. So I didn't go that route. I did go after it with a regular standard CV axle puller. I was struggling with that. It did not actually work for me. I did have to get behind here with a different tool and just hit it with a hammer, and eventually it popped off. What I did learn though is you definitely want the drive shaft off of the center carrier bearing mount, and you want it off of the transmission or transfer case, depending if you have two-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. That does help, but you do want it strung up. You don't want it down, otherwise it's not really preloading this CV joint, because remember, this CV joint slides in and out. So if you don't actually get it all the way to the end of its travel, then it's every time you hit it with a hammer, you're not actually putting any force to pop it off the circlip. So you can see it's pretty beat up back here. I did do a little damage to this. I don't intend on reusing it. I would say that if you're going to do this yourself in your driveway, definitely get a regular CV puller, give that a try. If not, phone a friend, see if you can get the actual Ford tool. I did have a couple of spare differentials, or I have 2 spare differentials here. I don't remember. Oddly enough, both of them came with this much of the CV joint on, probably because they had a hard time getting it off. So I was able to pop those right off when they were out of the car. I don't remember it being that hard, so I don't think every one of them is going to be that hard. But let's go ahead and get this drive shaft out of here, and let's get the one-piece carbon fiber drive shaft fit up, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, so we got the drive shaft out of the car now, and we have the Gulfcoast carbon fiber drive shaft unboxed sitting next to it so we can kind of compare them. Obviously, this is the opportunity to try a single piece versus the 2-piece drive shaft. So you can see there's obviously no carrier bearing anymore, no slip together yoke in the middle, no U-joints in the middle, none of that. Other differences, we're no longer going to be running this rubber piece. That was a dampener for the stock drive shaft. This is designed to bolt right to the transfer case. And obviously you can see the size of the U-joints on this is crazy different compared to the factory. I'm not sure what this drive shaft is rated for. I'm going to have to ask. I do know that it's rated for over 10,000 RPM and I believe 1,000 foot-pounds, but I could be wrong on that. I'm going to have to give Shane a call at Gulfcoast and get the actual numbers from him. Again, this is a prototype drive shaft. This isn't available yet, but if this all pans out, it'll be available relatively quick. The biggest thing that had to be done for this is we had to eliminate that CV joint that was at the end of the drive shaft that slides onto the rear diff. That's now just a yoke that is going to slide on there and give us enough room to get everything connected. So I'm going to go ahead and get that greased so that it goes on and off easy, and then take that U-joint apart and get this bolted to the front of the transmission, or the back of the transmission rather, the back of the transfer case, and then we'll get this thing slapped up in there and see if it's going to clear. All right, so we got the U-joint split apart there off the back of the drive shaft. That is going to go onto the rear end housing, and it's just going to slip over. You do got to tap it a little bit to get that circlip started in there, and then you're just going to push it all the way back until it seats in that circlip, and then it's not going anywhere. I did throw a little grease in there just to be safe. I do want to be able to take that off at some point. So now we're going to move to the front of the drive shaft, get that on the back of the transfer case, and then we'll see what's what from there. All right, so we hit a little snag here. As you can see, the factory output shaft on the transfer case has thread-in fasteners, and the fasteners that came with the drive shaft are the right size. Unfortunately, they are fine thread, and this is a coarse thread. So I'm gonna have to run to the store real quick and pick up some new hardware. Definitely we'll get that sorted out with Gulfcoast, so when they come with the right hardware. Okay guys, we're back from the hardware store. I was able to find some bolts. It is a M12 by 1.5. I was able to get some that are 30 millimeters long. That's going to work. I did go ahead and slide the drive shaft up in its place. That little section up here is actually a slip joint. So you're able to compress that. And then you just kind of, it's hard to do with one hand and demonstrate, but you just push the whole drive shaft forward and then you slide it up in there, and then later we'll come back and throw the bolts in this U-joint. So far so good. It looks like it's fitting. I don't think the heat shields are going to fit in the back, and question mark on the heat shields over the center, but we'll go ahead and give that a try once we get all these bolts in and buttoned up. All right, we got everything bolted up. The U-joints are bolted up. Everything's all set to go. Now I'm going to try to put these heat shields back in and see if we can get it. It's looking pretty tight back here. Not sure what we're going to be able to do with the heat shield that wraps around the gas tank. Hopefully we can get it in there. Not sure how the clearance is going to be here either. In the middle it should clear. The front it should clear just fine. If we have to, I can trim it a little bit and go from there. I do kind of want to have it back on there because I want to protect the drive shaft. Carbon fiber drive shafts, you really can't get any nicks in them. That significantly weakens their strength. We don't want anything rubbing on it obviously either. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll probably try to time lapse that. It might get a little weird because I don't know if it's going to fit. So all right, so to my surprise, kind of, I guess, it does look like all the heat shields are going to clear. We got plenty of clearance back here. I can get my whole hand in there. It's going to be a little tighter up here once we get this bracket bolted in. But but I can still get my fingers in there. So that should be plenty of clearance. Now this rear diff doesn't move a whole lot. The subframe does move with it a little bit, so that should be enough room, but I will be inspecting this after a couple launches to just see and make sure that we're not rubbing. Now, if you do want to keep the heat shields, which again, I recommend trying to keep the heat shields because it is going to protect the drive shaft. You can always bend this out. This bracket up here, a little bit more difficult. You might have to get in there with a hammer if you need to make more room. But so far, so good. I'm going to go ahead and get this all bolted back up, and then we'll get our exhaust back on, and then we can finally go test this. All right, well, we got everything cleaned up. We're ready to get this thing off the lift and go for a test drive. Thought it would be a good idea to show you guys this max jack. Now, this isn't a sponsored product, obviously, but it is a really nice deal. I did, unfortunately, run into an issue. I test drilled my concrete. It was 5 inches where I test drilled. Unfortunately, that was the only spot that it was 5 inches. So I did actually have to dig this out and pour back a 12-inch foundation, 12-inch thick foundation. When you don't have a continuous span of concrete, that's what you have to do. It's a 3x3, and actually that only goes down 3x3 to where the original concrete is. And then underneath that, there's another 6 inches all the way around. So it's actually a 4x4 on the base. But this max jack, I really love it. I've had the Explorer up on it a couple times. I picked my truck up with it. It is rated for 7,000 pounds. That's, you know, more than what I am ever going to pick up with it. I think the truck itself is about 6,200. Don't get me wrong. That is a 22 F-150 power boost. So the neat thing about the Max Jacks is it is releasable. You can just unbolt it. Those are bolt-in anchors. I did switch it out with epoxy anchors because the epoxy anchors are actually a little bit stronger than the pounded anchors. And after the first fiasco with the concrete not being thick enough and blowing out the bottom of the concrete with the anchor, I did not want to do pounded anchors again. So yeah, so the nice thing about this is when it's not in use, I can just unbolt it, wheel it off to the side, and that's it. And then next time I got to use it, I just bring it back out. So here's the power unit for it. Pretty straightforward. There's 2 hoses, one goes to each side. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. It's just 110, so there's nothing crazy that you need power-wise. And like I said, the biggest issue I ran into is the concrete, but that was easy enough to pour myself. Took about 2 days worth of work, you know, day to bust it out, put the rebar in, and pour it back. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing hooked up, and then we'll get it off the lift. Go ahead and give you that thermal R&D 3-inch E85 cold start. Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and let this warm up and take her for a ride and see how it is. Now, the things we're looking for with the one-piece drive shaft is any kind of weird vibration, especially at, you know, highway speeds and stuff like that. We're gonna go give it a shot, see how it is. Like I said, a little nervous about the one-piece versus the two-piece, but only one way to find out. Let's go for a ride. All right, guys, we're on the road. First impressions, it's not really any different than the stock drive shaft, and that's what we're after. There's no weird vibrations. We've been up to, you know, 60, 65 miles an hour here on the back roads. Not really feeling anything weird or funky yet. So I'm gonna take the car to the car wash, get it washed. It's been up in the garage on the lift for about a week, week and a half after I took the drive shaft measurements and stuff like that. So it's filthy. I'm gonna go get her washed and take her up on the highway and see what's what. Hit. All right, well, we're up on the highway. No vibrations, no weird noises. Put it through a little quick hit. Everything seems to be good. So, like I said in the beginning, the big things we were looking for is vibration that'd be caused from having a one-piece versus a two-piece. Doesn't feel like we're gonna have any of those issues. Overall, I'm really happy with it. In the future, we'll be sending this drive shaft out to Travis at Houston Speed Freaks. He's gonna be putting it on his car, and then he'll be taking it to the track and giving us some good test data on how it holds up to some pretty good 60 foots on a sticky track. Currently for this car, we're going to be actually taking it apart for a fun project. So I guess you guys are going to have to stay tuned for that. I'm not really going to give any hints on what's all entailed in that. But it is going to be a fun project. I am going to try to film some of it. I don't know how much of it I'm going to film. There are some prototype parts in there that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. Hopefully soon, but I will try to film as much as I can and try to just avoid those parts and not talk about those parts. I've been accumulating parts pretty much all summer for this build, so it is going to be a pretty decent build and should be a lot of fun. I don't know how this whole YouTube thing's going to go. I'm not trying to start a YouTube channel. I'm excited to have a car again that I can work on and, you know, actually have a project on. So, little backstory, for the last about 10 years or so, I haven't really had a project car. You know, before that, when I first started ZFG racing, I had a project car. It was a 95 DSM, you know, pretty cool build, 600 horsepower, 650 horsepower, give or take, big turbo, you know, all the fun stuff from 12, 13 years ago, right? I ended up selling that car when I moved up here, and, you know, just didn't have a project, didn't have space for a project, didn't have time for a project. I have kids, you know, life happens, right? So fast forward, we moved into a new house. This new house has the shop, which is a great space to work on stuff. Thanks to you guys buying tunes and really supporting me and buying parts from me, that's really helped me grow. And I'm finally able to have another car that can be a project. You know, one of the things that I found having only one vehicle, which is my 22 Power Boost, it's hard to really want to do stuff to that when I know that I need it the next day. You know, there's not a time when I can be without a vehicle for that. So here we are. You know, I bought this Explorer for R&D. It's not that nice of an Explorer. It's actually a salvage title. So, and then, you know, we'll see what happens. We're gonna really try to push it eventually, not right away. Like I said, we got some prototype parts that we got to go for and test. That's gonna take some time, and we'll see where it takes us. thanks for tuning in. Like I said, this is way outside of my comfort zone. I have the utmost respect for all the YouTubers and guys that do this full-time or part-time. It's a lot of work. It is very hard to sit there and work on your car and worry about filming, worry about trying to document stuff, trying to set up, some time-lapse shots. It definitely draws the process out. It was an interesting experience. Like I said, it's way outside of my comfort zone. I hope to get a little more comfortable with it. I hope to be able to do this more often now that I have a shop and a car to work on. So hopefully you'll see more of me on here. If not, oh well, we'll find out. Like I said, thank you guys all for the continuous support over all of the years. I'm able to do this stuff because you guys trust me to tune your vehicles and trust me to get you your parts when you order them off the website. And I really appreciate that. And this is all because of you guys, and I'm very grateful for it. Like I said, we're going to end the video off there. We'll see you guys later. In the meantime, stay tuned.